I know we've talked before about how Deadman was kind of the big turning point for
It
you.
was.
It was the first book you felt like it was really you,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people would say probably Sandman was your turn for them, right? Because that was a very visible.
I think, probably I would say that now it would seem like the natural thing, but it really was Batman. Because what had happened, Sandman was not the huge book it had become. It was going from, hey, you should read this, to then it was culty when I was getting it or looking at it, and then it exploded after Seasons. So after Seasons, yeah, a lot of people looked at it, but still it was a finite number. I mean, how many did they print? It wasn't like the X-Men, you know? And they had offered that book to me as a regular title, but at that point, Neil was going on to like these totally full scripts, which are fine. But I'm always a collaborator. I like to, even if it's this much collaboration, I like to say this, that, or the other thing. And like for Seasons, there was a few moments where I just had said, well, I think this would work better than that. And Neil was good enough then to say, well, if it works on the paper, okay, but it's got to work on the paper. And I said, it'll work on the paper, don't worry. You know, that's how I always am. But that came from the Deadman experience, where I just went to trusting myself. Everything up to that point was in my head. It isn't like you go away and get better. It was always there, and it was like a ghost. It's like I'm here. I'm rattling things. You have to do this. But there was never that opportunity. So when Deadman came along, it was something that I absolutely wanted to be fired for what I was going to put on paper. It was, if nothing else, this was it. Because I was so convinced at that point, I'd missed my time. I should have been in the late 60s and in the 70s artist, not now. All the stuff that influenced me had went away. And so that had made me angry. Not at the companies or anything, not even at fans, just this atmosphere. That's the way it is. So I had been very angry. All this stuff was there. I had always, whenever I would show my pencils to someone before Deadman, they go, man, these are really good. And then the books would never reflect that. So that all grows, right? And at that point, I drew with incredible love and total disdain and anger at the same time. You know, it's like, this will piss them off. They'll hate this, you know? And that's a lot of the energy. So I wanted to keep that as I went. When I went to Sandman, that was my attitude. I used to tell Neil, all he does is stand around, Neil. I'm going to make him do things. I'm going to have him act, you know? And Neil would be like, yeah, that's fine. I said, I just don't want page after page of talking guys. You know, I want them doing stuff. So all of a sudden I said, there's going to be wind around him all the time to make his cape do things. It's like there'll only be one light on in everything. I'll just darken everything. And it went over well, you know, it went over well. But I only looked at those jobs. I saw it no differently. I did some Grimjacks then that I really enjoyed. I did a Swamp Thing I really enjoyed. So I was just really happy now that people were calling saying, do that thing you do, whatever that thing is, do that. Rather than, why are you doing that thing? It's funny how that happens, you know? So, but Deadman had opened that door, and then it was received really well. I mean, it went from nobody knows who you are to they're calling you like they've always known who you are. And I went, yeah, I can get used to this. This is easy. I didn't have to warn anyone what was coming anymore. You know, I didn't have to sit there and wait when you know, there's that terrible thing where you do something that you know is great and it comes back with nothing, right? That's art. That is some art. Next, you know, that thing. It came back with, this is exactly what we want. And to this day, that was the lesson of Deadman. I can look back and with those pages, I can still look and remember that day I did it. I can remember it very crystal, because it was like where everything aligns. They give you the job, they don't care about it. It isn't like Batman versus the Joker with Superman in it. You know, it isn't any of that. I didn't have anything like that. It was just, here's a character with a story, so we can keep the copyright because we have to publish it so often. Here you go. And we'll see in about a year. Can you do this in a year? And I was like, this is all great. Everything else that would make another, freelancer paranoia kick in, rotten character, nobody cares, we'll see you in a year. I'm like going, this is wonderful. So I took that, and I made a point not to turn in any art until absolutely they would say, hey, are you alive? Are you doing anything? Don't you want to be paid? No, I don't. I'm living on, dried beans and cat food. I'm fine, And so finally I would have to turn in, it would be these huge, I think they were thinking, oh, he'll only turn in 5. He spent 3 months, we're going to get 5 pages. And I would turn in like 40 pages, fully formed, completely detailed. I made it so intricate they couldn't change anything, it'd be like dominoes. And none of this, to be fair to them, they had no idea I was psychotic like this. They were like going, hey, we just like it. I mean, I still keep the notes, and I'm like going, I'm going to keep these notes of appreciation to use against them in court. They liked it. Back then, they liked it before they said change everything, So I kept all this stuff, and I kept waiting for it. And, Karen Berger would say how much she liked it. I would start hearing that. Richard Bruning was the editor, would tell me how many people were really digging it. And I go, is that for real? I don't know. And I never would press. I would go, yeah, okay. That's okay. Because I was afraid if I did anything, it would go away. Somebody would come in and go, he's skeleton, and it's monstrous, and it's wrong. And here's Neil. Look at Neil Adams. That's how you do it. And that was everything I feared, because it was running through my year. 6 years at Marvel, I was doing great, but no one cared. I didn't care. No one cared. And I was on all these books where I hadn't, the little moments I'd get input, I would always hear from the editor saying, this is great. And nothing else would ever happen. It wouldn't grow into anything. So at that point, I had been Marvel affected. So at DC, I thought, well, they're all the same. And they're not. At that, there was a very different attitude then. And I just took that and made it. And then I decided that if that worked, I'm going to do that on everything. I go to it and go, this is going to bug you, but I'm going to do it. And then luckily other people, other artists started doing similar things, not like off of me, but their own thing. There seemed to be, I was very fortunate to have the foresight. If I had any foresight, it was to not be influenced by the stuff going on then, like Image and whatnot, to not, because there were notes coming down to a lot of people, adapt or die, right? And I figured my days of adapting to that are done. I'll go my way and see what happens. I'd rather fail that way. Everything I do is, when they fire me, it's on my terms now. It's not, So, but then I would start hearing from other artists, other people I really liked, and they go, this is like Bill Sienkiewicz, this is really good. What you're doing is good. I would hear from these people just out of left field. This is really good. But then it got better. I would start hearing from production staff who never come, they never come out of their troll holes. And they would say, they would all start asking to work on my stuff because it was different. And luckily, DC didn't send me the notes to become like him, but everybody went. I mean, all these guys I knew all of a sudden were drawing like Image. I don't blame them. They're all making a fortune, But that went away, and it looks of its time. And I just figured I want to look of a time too, but 1972, not 1992. It's like, so, and I have no trouble when people say, well, you look like from those days. I go, guilty. Absolutely guilty. I always try to compete, but I don't compete with the time I'm in. I compete with those other times and go, well, Could I have walked in and got a job from Roy Thomas? You know, would Joe Orlando kick me out? That was my thing.
I just tweeted to a writer I know who's saying he's getting so fed up because artists are falling through, or not doing the job they're supposed to be doing or whatever. And he said, I've wanted to make comics since I was a kid. I'm going to start drawing myself. And I responded to him, I've been thinking recently about things like the popularity of Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Captain Underpants, and how all these things you talk about, drawing photorealistically, it's not a measure of your success as a comics creator. And
no.
What if we can just pare it down, as long as we're telling the story well, right?
We create with emotion, and we receive that creation of others or ourselves with emotion. Nowhere in there does it say you get brownie points for getting the knee to the foot right, or the width of the eyes. No one, I don't. I just react, right? Ray Bradbury famously said that anyone who felt that they were going to go and learn from a great university how to be a writer will never be a great writer. That those people know nothing, right? He wanted to be Edgar Rice Burroughs. He wanted to be Alex Raymond, right? Like Alex Raymond's comic strips. That's what he wanted to be. So he aped it. But what happened was his own personality came out into that. And he became probably one of the great writers of all time, not just of what his genre is. And he's completely, he learned from reading. He learned from loving stuff. He didn't say that, in fact, I remember he was taken to task because he never explained the science in his books. And he like did a mental middle finger at people, he'd say, who cares? It's a rocket ship. It goes faster than light. It's there. It's about people. So to me, Batman was about fear. How do I get there? All that other stuff does not say fear. It just says stuff, and you have to let these things wash over you. I mean, when you take in a good piece of music or a film or a comic or whatever, I don't go in by judging it. What would I do? Or nuts and bolts. I just go, did it work on me? I don't apologize for liking stuff nobody else likes. I can like something incredibly dark and awful and totally saccharine at the same time. I can go and buy Bauhaus and ABBA's greatest hits and be completely confident in myself and listen to them the same day while I'm working. No problem. Because it's all emotion. And that's what you're digging for. It isn't. I learned to draw by drawing. If I needed to know how to do something, if there was a technical thing, I would just go to the art store and buy a little pamphlet on how to do that.
What are some examples? What are some examples of pamphlets you bought?
Oh, there would be there was one on caricaturing from one of the Disney guys. And I wanted to do more different expressions, but I'm not a reference guy. I don't like reference. I like my own imagination. And I mean, reference, if I have to draw something that they say there's a technical aspect, like a train a certain way or whatever, okay, fine. But people, I look at people generally. And, but being an artist sitting by yourself all day, they're not around all the, So I remember doing that and getting a thing on just doing cartooning. I love Chuck Jones. I must have watched, specifically doing Batman, I remember watching The Grinch about 700 times in a row, just sketching the whole time, because I wanted these faces, And then because that stays in your head, you go to draw, it starts coming out in the drawing. No one would know it, but I did,
Yeah, that's an interesting trick. I know that like some of my early portfolio reviews, they'd say just pick something each day and draw it all day. Clocks, wristwatches, whatever. And then it just gets, or for that matter, Ditko hands, Kirby hands, you know, and then you just kind of, then you kind of get it after you put that time in.
Well, you also tell anybody asking you, yeah, I can draw that. Yeah. Can you, right now, Kelley, can you do Victorian 13-year-olds in 1892? Yeah. I do that all the time when I'm off on my own. I'm the guy. How weird. And then I go, Jesus, how am I going to do this? You figure it out. I mean, I begin to rely not on my technical skills or anything I learned, but on intangibles. And on it'll strike tomorrow. Whatever I need, it'll strike. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And it'll be like something incredibly not in my wheelhouse. And I go, I'll figure it out. You know, it'll all come to me. And I think that comes from watching movies, not reading comics. It came from, I really liked, there's certain directors that will do certain things. And I go, that's an interesting angle. That's a very different way of looking at something. And I remember being, for example, very perplexed when I was doing the Batman run. And I wanted this thing to be interesting, and I didn't know how to make it tension-filled, because in the story it says before they electrocute a guy, they're going to plug in the plug and electrocute him, right? And I'm going, well, how do I make that tension-filled? A guy holding a plug. And I tried it, and it didn't work, and I get away from it. I just go, all right, I go to McDonald's, and I get a hamburger and a cup of coffee, and I just sit there and go, this is throwing me. This should not throw me. Why is this? I've been drawing for years. I come up with stuff, and this one panel, everything came to an end. And then it hit me. It hit me. I go, well, you're being too literal. You're trying to tell the story. You shouldn't. You should slow people down and make them consider what's going on by confusing them. So I made the angle of the shot for that panel from inside from the wall plug to before it's plugged in, right? So you're looking out and I remember I just did these two slots, and you could see the guy holding it and the plug in the other, and it stopped people. I think no more about it, right? I think no more. I turn it in. I solved the problem. I think it's great. Who cares? It's one panel. If I would have done it, nobody would have said anything if I did it straight, right? But I had a number of other guys in the bullpen there at DC call me about that. Where did that come from? What movie did you see that in? That's really good. Like, that is, it worked. It was just one of those things. And if I had followed all these rules of how you do stuff, that would have never happened. And that's times 1,000 in my career. There's all these little things where first day of getting the Deadman, I froze. All day was a wasted day. It was a tight deadline. The next morning I get up and I just said, I'll take his name literally. Boom. And it drew itself. At that point, it was no effort. I made up that lost day, and it was exciting because I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I'm not advocating illiteracy in learning things or whatever, but I'm just going, take it with a grain of salt. There's no solutions to this. That the best thing for me was the excitement of reading a comic or something, that excitement that you try to get that when you're drawing. I don't do it saying, oh, they'll love this now. That's not in my mind. It's like, today I wasn't bored. Today was a great day. I was not bored and driving myself nuts. Like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? If I get a page that's like a story page, it's not interesting. Find something to make it interesting. You know, you're going to get a lot of story pages where it's guys talking. Nowadays, that's all that happens in comics. Is like huge conversations and modes of alienation. I go, oh man, I don't want my life. I want their life. Now their life is my life. I don't want that. So I always go for that. I always think, well, how can I make this different? You know, how can I make this cool? And I think ultimately, if comics has anything, it needs that. It needs that moment of inspiration, of desperation, of imagination. One of the Schantz have to be in there.